I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Kyrgyzstan to introduce an address by the head of state.
Distinguished Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, distinguished Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to present the video statement by His Excellency Sadyr Zhaparov, President of the Kyrgyz Republic, at the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Thank you very much indeed. Distinguished Mr. President, distinguished Secretary General, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, from the outset, I would like to congratulate Mr. Abdullah Shahid from the state of the Maldives on his election to the post as President of the 76th session of the UN General Assembly. I would like to wish him every success in this important post. I would like to thank Mr. Volkan Bozkir from the state of Turkey for his work as the President of the 75th session of the UN General Assembly. Kyrgyzstan supports the topic of today's debate, which covers all pressing issues on the international agenda. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, 30 years ago, Kyrgyzstan became a fully fledged member and a subject under international law when it gained its sovereignty. Very recently, on the 31st of August, our multi-ethnic people celebrated 30 years of our country's independence. I believe, and I believe many would agree with me, that the country's main achievements over this historically short period of time is the establishment of democracy as a model for the development of statehood and for a strong society. I'd like to assure you that we will remain steadfast on the democratic path. This is what our freedom-loving people wants. We will soon mark the anniversary of the famous October events in our country, which kicked off a new stage in its contemporary history. Over the space of a year, we have managed to restore socio-political stability and socio-economic stability that has lent the trust and confidence of the people. The results of the presidential elections and the constitutional referendum were recognized by the international community, including by OSCE observers from the UN Office of Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. General elections await us to the National Parliament, and they're slated for the 28th of November. I would call upon UN member states and international organizations to send their observers. We will put all conditions in place to ensure they can work fully and safely. We trust that by the time of the elections, the COVID-19 situation in the country will be back to normal. Distinguished Secretary General, on the 2nd of March 2022, we will also celebrate the 30th anniversary of Kyrgyzstan joining the United Nations organization. Over that period, our country has been an active UN member state. It has been fully committed to the aims and principles of the United Nations Charter and has consistently favoured strengthening the prestige and role of the UN in international affairs. Unfortunately, over recent decades, these have been characterised by tension and conflict. Our country is keen and always eager to make its contribution to international efforts to tackle shared problems facing humanity. Based on these considerations, Kyrgyzstan put forward its candidacy to the Human Rights Council for 2023-2025 and put forward its candidacy as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council for 2027-2028. We urge all UN member states to support us in the elections. Next year, the 30th anniversary of joining the UN will also be celebrated by our dear neighbours in the region. We share a common history and, I'm convinced, a common future with them. I'd like to underscore that during our centuries-long relationship with our neighbours, Kyrgyzstan has always promoted equal dialogue and mutually acceptable cooperation. We've also advocated addressing all disagreements through negotiations alone. Given the significance of this date, in 2022, we propose holding a Central Asia UN summit. The idea is to take stock together of mutual cooperation and develop joint plans for the future in terms of developing Central Asia and its security. We propose the summit be organised during the advisory meeting of the heads of state of Central Asia. I would ask the distinguished President of the General Assembly and the UN Secretary General to plan for their participation in their work schedules for next year. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thanks to its geographical location, the Central Asian states, from times of yore, starting from the Great Silk Road and to this very day, has been a bridge which joins the routes from the east to the west and the north to the south. Our region undoubtedly is becoming one of the most important hubs of world trade. This is despite having no direct access to the sea. In Central Asian countries, a gradual expansion of international roads and railways is underway. Logistical centres and transport hubs are being set up. In turn, Kyrgyzstan is actively developing its own roads, which is a part of the international transport through roads. In particular, work will soon be completed on an alternative north-south highway. We're also involved in a project to build the China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan mainline railway. We support the modernisation of the Eurasian railway infrastructure. Even now, Kyrgyzstan is in a position to provide advantageous delivery times and costs for goods between countries of the Eurasian Economic Union, Central Asia, the People's Republic of China, and the European Union to the seaports of Karachi, Bandar Abbas, and the Black Sea. We would like to invite international logistic businesses to engage in multiform cooperation inter alia in the area of multimodal transport. Nonetheless, I'd like to underscore that successful investment projects and new transport corridors cannot provide maximum benefit if barriers to crossing state borders are maintained. In this regard, we advocate creating propitious conditions for international transport and preventing delays in freight flows between countries. We also advocate lifting barriers to economic cooperation and simplifying border crossing procedures and transit between countries and regions. Distinguished colleagues, we cannot fail to mention our concern regarding recent events in Afghanistan. We are in a position to provide 500 young Afghans with an opportunity to study in our universities and also to provide humanitarian assistance to those in need. First and foremost, these will be ethnic Kyrgyz living in the Little and Big Pamir area of Afghanistan. Given the ongoing evacuation of UN agencies from Afghanistan, Kyrgyzstan is proposing temporarily relocating them to Bishkek. In this regard, we urge the UN Secretary General to consider our proposal. Furthermore, given the situation in Afghanistan, the question of the security of Central Asia is once again at the forefront. We hope that social political stability and law and order will be quickly re-established in Afghanistan. Kyrgyzstan is carrying out multi-pronged work to combat terrorism and extremism. Kyrgyzstan, in good faith, is implementing the provisions of the UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy, the UN Security Council resolutions, the recommendations of the CTED, Executive Directorate of the UN Security Council. Thus, Kyrgyzstan is already using passenger locator forms and data on passenger manifests in order to monitor international movements of terrorists. We are banking on the UN's support and that of interested states to help repatriate our citizens from Syria, including women and children. Moreover, we call for international efforts to be stepped up, not only to combat terrorism and extremism, but also to combat transnational organized crime. This involves illicit activities such as drugs and arms trafficking, human trafficking, laundering, criminal income, and cybercrime. Kyrgyzstan, within the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, is working on setting up a center to combat international organized crime in Bishkek. We believe that in order to combat modern threats and challenges to international security and to prevent conflict, a significant role should be played by regional structures. Kyrgyzstan, either as a member or as a participant, it participates in the Commonwealth of Independent States, the Collective Security Treaty Organization, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the meeting on trust building measures in Asia, and also the Organization for Security Cooperation in Europe. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a serious challenge to humanity was posed by the coronavirus pandemic. It has caused numerous victims. It has put national healthcare systems under unprecedented pressure and has caused a collapse of the global economy. We hope that thanks to work underway on medications and treatments, we will soon fully overcome this terrible virus. It's important for the know-how against viruses to be accessible to all very soon. As regards the situation in our country, I'd like to point out that our authorities have undertaken necessary measures to protect the lives and health of the population, and in particular that of healthcare workers. Our vaccination campaign is well underway. There are vaccine awareness raising campaigns. The country has various different vaccines from different global producers. I'd like to take this opportunity to express our sincere gratitude to the leadership of China, Russia, Kazakhstan, and Sweden, who've provided us with vaccines as a form of humanitarian assistance, either bilaterally or as part of the COVAX program under the WHO. The coronavirus pandemic was also a reason for the fact that achieving the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals in Kyrgyzstan, is not going to be possible on time and fully. We have had to rechannel finances earmarked for the SDGs to combat the pandemic and to service external debt. In this regard, we would urge our bilateral and multilateral creditors to support the initiatives on debt relief pegged to very important sustainable development projects in Kyrgyzstan. These projects, first and foremost, are to preserve the integrity of our unique mountain ecosystem and its biological diversity, and ice caps which are swiftly being destroyed as a result of climate change. It is very unfortunate that in Kyrgyzstan there are some ill-intentioned investors who are chasing after significant profit and abuse the people's trust, and so they do not take due care that their activities do not harm the environment. In line with our national legislation, the Kyrgyz authorities have been curbing these kind of activities, but we need to deal with the ecological consequences thereof nonetheless by dealing with harmful refuge, etc. Over the past 3 decades, Kyrgyzstan has been an active advocate of the interests of mountain states that are landlocked in order to tackle the challenges of sustainable development and the impact of climate change. On our initiative, 2002 was declared the International Year of Mountains, and in that year in Bishkek there was the first Global Mountain Summit. In 2018 there was the 4th World Mountain Summit. During this session of the UN General Assembly, there is the Group of Friends of Mountain Countries, and we are hoping that 2022 will be declared the International Year of Mountains. This would confirm the 5-year plan for sustainable development in mountain regions up to 2022, and then to create a global summit, Bishkek 25. Distinguished Secretary General, over the past few years, the people and nature in our country have significantly felt the negative impact of climate change. The position and views of our country will be put forward clearly at the forthcoming COP26 on climate change in Glasgow. I'd like to take the opportunity of this important rostrum to make a few remarks nonetheless. For mountainous Kyrgyzstan, one of the priority thorny areas is climate change adaptation. We pay particular attention to protecting the areas of our mountain forests, along with playing a natural function of absorbing carbon. They also play a very important role in preserving water resources. In this regard, we are in favour of developing and adopting under the aegis of the UN a special targeted programme on mountainous forests to protect them, replant them, and to help them. As I've previously mentioned, ice caps and rivers are under threat in Kyrgyzstan, and this year, in UNESCO, we are initiating a resolution to protect mountain ice caps, and at the same time, we're continuing to work with international partners to implement the provisions of the resolution, Nature Knows No Borders. This was put forward by Kyrgyzstan and was recently approved by the UN General Assembly. Some significant achievements have already been made. For example, thanks to the work with different countries, international organizations have managed to protect certain animals, such as the snow fox. Furthermore, by 2050, Kyrgyzstan will try to achieve carbon neutrality. Kyrgyzstan's economy is becoming greener. We are going to turn to carbon-free sources of energy, and I am thinking first and foremost about hydroelectricity here. In order to ensure energy security, Kyrgyzstan intends gradually to implement a number of projects to build hydroelectric stations that are ecologically clean sources of energy. Access to modern, environmentally friendly, green and inexpensive energy resources in developing countries is extremely important in terms of achieving the global aims in the area of development and in achieving the 2030 agenda. We believe that achieving hydroelectric station building in Kyrgyzstan, ensuring that we do this, will meet Central Asian countries' need for hydroelectricity, and thus will create good conditions for sustainable development of our region. I would invite investors to work closely with the hydroelectric sector, including based on a public-private partnership principle, in the spirit of the Paris Agreement. In concluding this particular topic, Kyrgyzstan trusts that the support and assistance of the international community, the UN and international financial institutions will be paid to solving the problems of the ecosystems and ecologies of mountainous countries that are landlocked. In this regard, we trust that the issue of setting up within the UN a special global fund to support mountainous countries in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and adapting and preventing climate change will be set up. Distinguished Secretary General, in conclusion, I'd like to point out that the fight against COVID-19 and dealing with its socio-economic impact, achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, and also implementing the Paris Agreement, all these should be a top priority in terms of consolidating efforts and work of the international community. We need to ensure that no one is left behind, including in developing mountainous countries that are landlocked. As we work together to counter contemporary challenges and threats, the role of the UN is significantly increasing. In this regard, I would urge for comprehensive support to be lent to our organisation in order to solve together the global problems for the benefit of sustainable development and for all. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very fruitful session in the general debate. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of Kyrgyz Republic for the statement just made.